Hello, this is Jason Matthews. I'm a retired law enforcement officer, and today I'm going to be doing a part 2 response video based on the comments that I saw down in part 1 of the video I released entitled, "Should Police Wear Body Cameras?" There were some common themes in the comments down below that video, so if you haven't watched that video, go watch that video first, so you have a complete background, and then come back and watch this video. But before we get started, if you support the police, click the like button. And if you do not support the police, click the dislike button. It's anonymous. And I'm just curious of where you stand. All right, let's get started. I try to read as many comments as I can below the videos. There's a lot. And even in retirement, I'm pretty busy. I do a lot of traveling and I have other projects going on. But JT, who is doing the monitoring of most of the comments, has brought to my attention many comments, and those comments have a common theme. And relating to body cameras, that common theme is, why are body cameras not left on during the entire shift? Because when I recorded part 1, one of the negatives that I stated was body cameras are only turned on, generally speaking, in most jurisdictions when an officer feels it is necessary. Officers in many jurisdictions could have hundreds of interactions with the public throughout the day. So if you're doing parking and traffic control, for example, you could have many people coming up to you and having conversations with you. If you're just walking the street, you could be having regular public interaction with people, talking to people. And so normally a law enforcement officer will turn on a body camera when he believes that he's going to have a law enforcement related interaction where there's probable cause or reasonable suspicion. Sometimes things will happen where the body camera will not be turned on. Things happen in a split second that the officer is not normally expecting. And one example I gave was, if an officer is just talking to a regular citizen on the street, that body camera is not on. And there's no reason for the body camera to be on. He's just standing there talking to someone about the weather or whatever the case may be. But let's say that person gets irritated with the conversation, doesn't like the police, whatever the case may be, and then all of a sudden they slap that officer across the face. Now the officer has to do a use of force and arrest the individual. So he turns the body camera on. He does a use of force. He forces the individual to the ground, handcuffs them, takes them to the patrol vehicle, puts them in the back of the patrol vehicle, closes the door, and turns off the body camera. That's the way it normally works. The body camera is only turned on when a law enforcement incident is happening. And there's several reasons for this, several very good reasons for this. And I saw down in the comments some very uninformed comments, and that's why I'm here to inform you of the reality of what's going on in law enforcement and why things are done and why things are not done. The first reason why body cameras cannot be on all the time, and this could change, but the first reason is, when I was in law enforcement, and it has not been too long since I've been retired, but the body cameras that we had and most departments have right now, they can't be left on all shift. The battery will die. Now that could change in the future with updated models, but even with an updated model, that costs thousands and thousands of dollars to have entire personnel outfitted with brand new model cameras. So just from a practical standpoint, in most jurisdictions, with the models that are out there right now, the Axon, usually people are using Axon cameras right now. And with current models that have been deployed in the last few years, those body cameras can only be activated for a certain amount of time or the battery will die. But that's not the most important reason why body cameras are not on during the entire shift. You got to think critically and intelligently about this. I've got a lot of comments down in the comment section. I get it. You're not law enforcement. You don't understand this. Yet you comment without doing research on this And that gives me the opportunity to do a video such as this to correct many of those comments. So thank you for commenting and giving me the material and the opportunity to inform you of why this is happening. The main reason why body cameras are not turned on at all times, and some of the comments I saw were, well, they should be turned on remotely by the dispatch center and turned off at the end of the shift by the dispatch center. Or the officer should turn it on at the beginning of the shift and it doesn't get turned off the entire shift until they're off shift. Law enforcement officers have to use the restroom just like you. So when they go into the restroom, do you think that that is appropriate to have their private parts captured in a video? Don't you think that's an invasion of privacy? You wouldn't want your private parts caught on camera. Why would the officer think that that's okay? No court is going to allow that to happen. And I got one comment saying, well, the body camera is pointing forward, so it wouldn't capture the body parts. I hate to be graphic, but think about it. If you're wiping your butt and you bend over, that camera is pointing right at the private parts. And I'm trying to keep this as clean as possible because on this channel, I don't like profanity. And a lot of the comments that are posted are profanity, which get deleted, by the way. So when you bend over, that body camera is capturing right between the legs of the officer. Second of all, police officers have to go into public restrooms regularly, not only to use the restroom themselves. And you can say, well, the officer shouldn't go into a public restroom and use the restroom. Okay, whatever, but that's not reality. If you gotta go, you gotta go. Number two, if an officer walks into a restroom and the body camera is on, that's capturing you in a public place, you, the member of the public. That's a violation of your privacy. And you could say, well, what's the officer doing in a public restroom? Many times in my career, I was called into public restrooms because of a variety of different incidents. Someone had been assaulted in the restroom, sexual assaults, someone passed out, many different reasons why an officer would go into a public restroom. And so when an officer walks into that restroom, that body camera is capturing everything. If someone's at the urinal, that's going to capture that person. And someone said in the comments, when I brought this to their attention, of course, their ego got in the way and they said, well, I don't have any problem with it. Really? You don't have any problem with a body camera capturing you at a urinal in a public bathroom? I don't think you're being serious. What if your kids were in there using the urinal? And finally, as I alluded to a moment ago, if someone has been sexually assaulted, for example, do you want that body camera capturing that? Absolutely not. No court will allow any of this, and for very good reason. It's a violation of your privacy rights. And so that's for your protection why the body camera is not on all the time, on all shifts, 8 hours a day or whatever the shift may be. If you don't like the police and you have an emotional reaction and you're just commenting, you can do that as long as you're not using profanity. But I would encourage you to research what you're saying before you comment and be informed as much as possible. Think about it. Think about this critically. And some of the commenters said the officer should not ever be allowed to turn off the body camera. Poor idea for the reasons that I mentioned. That is there to protect you, your family, and the public at large, and your children. Additionally, another reason is that has your personal private information on there. When an officer does a vehicle stop based on probable cause, for example, the tail light of a vehicle is out and he does a vehicle stop and he goes up to the window and he gets your driver's license and he brings it back to the vehicle and he's looking at the driver's license, that body camera is filming your personal information. And you could say, well, edit it out. The police do not have the manpower to sit around and edit out thousands of hours of body camera footage. It's not realistic. And if you believe that, you're kidding yourself. Also, the officer could be filming your home address if they respond to your house or your neighbor's house. Do you want that personal information out there? No, there's privacy laws. No court will allow that. And even if you could edit everything out, such as assaults that I mentioned before, kids, private information, how many people do you want looking at that information as it's edited out? The officer has to look at it. Then the supervisor has to look at it and verify that it's information that needs to be edited out. And then someone has to actually edit it out. How many people do you want looking at someone's naked body during the editing process? Think about it. It just makes more sense to turn it on and off from a practical standpoint to protect you and the public as officers feel as necessary. Is it a perfect solution? No, it's not a perfect solution. And again, go back and watch part 1 where I gave you the positives and the negatives. One commenter actually said that body cams should be live streamed at all times. So you want all the stuff that I mentioned to be broadcast live at all times. And one person said it should be immediately uploaded to a police website. I don't think you've thought this through very well. Another thing I wanted to address, which is a huge misconception out there, and I mentioned before, is that YouTube is not a good place to judge body camera footage. Why is that? Because it's all bad news. Think about when you watch Fox News or CNN or whatever your political slant is, which I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, but those are not only biased, left or right, but also, what are they giving you? They're giving you negative news all the time. The worst of the worst. Yeah, they might throw in a little lighthearted story here and there, but why are they doing that? Because that's what sells. That's what keeps you watching. They want to keep you watching so you watch the commercials. That's how they make their money. So they're feeding you constantly negative news. The same thing happens with police body camera footage. It gives you the false perception that police are constantly doing the wrong thing. Yet what you're watching is 1% of body camera footage that's out there. If I, as a law enforcement officer on a daily basis, come in contact with 100 people, could be more if there's a protest or a gathering or something, and there's thousands of law enforcement officers out there in thousands of jurisdictions across the United States, do you see all that? Do you see when the cops do everything right? It's boring. You won't want to watch that. You're watching the 1% all negative against police. Yeah, there's some good stuff out there, but it's boring. People don't want to watch it. It's shock value. And so when you watch the news, it's the same principle. Shock value. It appeals to your animal instinct of focusing on the negative. I encourage you to think this through thoroughly. Don't be deceived. Yes, there are corrupt police out there. If you haven't watched the video that I put out, Are Police Corrupt? Go watch that video, and I explain that in depth. But just because you see a bunch of videos on YouTube where police are doing the wrong thing, violating people's rights, or whatever the case may be, you're being sold a product. YouTube is selling you a product. Just like Fox News, just like the reality shows, just like CNN, just like MSNBC, they want you to watch the commercials. So they're going to put that out there to the forefront because that retains your viewership. My videos are boring. Why? Because I'm explaining to you just policies and procedures. I'm not trying to shock you. I'm just telling you the way it is, and that's very boring. People don't want to hear that. People don't want to hear the truth. People have biases that they're aware of and they're unaware of, conscious and unconscious. I do too. Everybody does. But I'm different in the way that I know I have biases and I'm aware of it and I can recognize it and take action. Most people have no clue they have a bias. For example, all news organizations out there, without exception, have a bias. Why? Because people are biased by human nature. Even like AP and Reuters are biased to a lot less extent than Fox News and CNN, but they still are biased. When I open up the news on my AP app every day, On occasion, I see and read some bias. It's very minimal, but it's there. So when people come to videos such as mine, they've already had their mind made up, unconsciously or consciously. They don't like the police. I've been accused of being a police supporter and a police hater on this channel. That's how funny this is. I've received comments from both sides, which is fine. That means I'm doing something right here. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible. The point of this channel is to tell you the way I see it based on my experience. Just tell you the way it is. Is there some bias that comes through there? Yeah, there's some bias, but I know I have a bias and I'm conscious of it and I try to avoid it consciously. So do not be fooled by the 1% bad police videos that are out there on YouTube. You don't want to watch the 99%. And I'm just estimating. It could be slightly higher, could be 95%. It's an estimate. 99% of the time, the police are doing their job. They're doing it correctly. You're watching the worst of the worst. Don't be deceived. And that was one of the negatives that I put out in part 1 about body cameras. I'm not saying you have to support police or hate police. It's not a black and white issue. I don't support police and I don't hate police. I'm just telling you, based on my experience, the way it is, the way I saw it in my decades of experience. If you don't agree with the laws, don't take it up with the police. The police have a job to do. Take it up with your elected representatives. They're the ones who make the laws that the police follow. And in some rare cases, don't follow the 1% that you watch on YouTube most of the time. On some of my videos, I get silly comments such as, police are wimps. In reference to one of the videos where I explained why police tell people to come out of an area, like out of the bushes, rather than go in. Police are trained that way. It's not that they're scared. They would get disciplined if they did not do it the way they've been trained. So those comments, I just laugh when I see those comments because this is a good example of people lashing out at the police. And why do people lash out at the police? There could be several different reasons why people lash out at the police. Number one, these YouTube videos, like I explained already, the 1%. Number two, they could have had a poor interaction from the police when they were stopped. But in many cases, examine your own actions. If you got stopped for running a stop sign and the police came to your window and you had an attitude about it and you know that you ran the stop sign, think about it. If you want the interaction to go well, you be the person who leads that interaction. It really depends a lot on you. And why does it depend a lot on you? Because generally speaking, the police are going to go a lot softer on you if you're compliant and cooperating. Why is that? Because if you run a stop sign and you're argumentative about it, and it's obvious that you ran a stop sign, I'm more likely to give you a ticket. And why am I more likely to give you a ticket? Because you need to learn the lesson. You're not apologetic about it. You're not realizing that you ran the stop sign. You're not realizing that you broke the law. So I'm more likely to give you a ticket if you're argumentative because you have not learned the lesson. If you're like, officer, I realize, you don't even have to apologize. You can just say, because I've received a lot of apologies over the years when I was a law enforcement officer, and I told them, you don't have to apologize. It's no problem. I understand. You ran the stop sign. You realize you ran the stop sign. I'm not going to give you a ticket because you recognize what you did. You're cognizant. You're conscious of what you did, and you are conveying to me that you regret it. The point of giving a ticket or arresting someone not only is to convey the message, but to stop the action from happening again. If you have an attitude about it and you're arguing, clearly you have not received the message. So I'm more likely to give you a ticket because that's the point of giving the ticket, to stop the action from happening in the future. You see these videos, these police audit videos on YouTube, and it's just there for shock value. There's no value to it. You're not going to change the actions of law enforcement by putting out these police audit videos. They're just pure entertainment, where people are going up to police and harassing them, really is what it is, for doing their job. For example, I don't watch these too much, but I was recommended a video on YouTube. Some guy walked up to, I don't remember what it was, a DMV building or something, and he was photographing everywhere. From a law enforcement perspective, that's a red flag. Now, can I take action against that person? Probably not, but I sure am going to go talk to that person and try to find out what they're doing and why. Why is that? If someone's just randomly taking pictures of a building, don't you think 9/11 could have been prevented? Or the Oklahoma City bombing? Not necessarily 9/11, but the Oklahoma City bombing, for example, or other terrorist acts. If someone would have said something and the police would have contacted Timothy McVeigh or whatever example you want to give. It's not that police are trying to harass people. There's a reason why they would contact someone who's just randomly taking pictures of a building. Now, can they stop them from leaving? No, they cannot necessarily. It depends on the circumstances, but they sure can go and try to have a voluntary conversation with them. There's nothing illegal about a police officer walking up to someone and starting to ask them questions. Now, do they have to answer? No, they don't necessarily have to answer if they're not doing anything illegal. But officers are trained in the academy to go up and start talking to suspicious people to get information voluntarily. It's a voluntary conversation. So if I walk up to you and I say, "Why are you here right now?" Do you have to answer? No, not necessarily. If I have no probable cause, you don't have to answer. But I can ask the question. I can ask you anything I want as a law enforcement officer. But you don't have to answer. But this is just another example of things you see in these YouTube videos. People are outraged because police are questioning people, but that's the training. That's not individual police officers doing things illegally. I can approach you. I can ask you questions. As long as you're free to leave and you can walk away and you can be silent and ignore me, you can do that if I have no probable cause. But I can also ask you anything I want. And if you respond, depends on what you say, then that could be used against you. If I walk up to you and say, "Where's the drugs?" and you say, "They're in my pocket," and then I smell marijuana, that may give me enough, depending on the details of the incident, to take further action. But you volunteered that information. I just asked it. It was a question. You don't have to respond. So in these body camera videos, you see a lot of people commenting on things that they have no idea about. But again, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to inform you about what the reality is. But I would encourage you, when you see body camera footage, to be very skeptical for the reasons I mentioned in that video, part 1. Should police wear body cameras? I got a little off subject here, but I probably will do another video related to what I was talking about in voluntary police interactions, voluntary and non-voluntary. I would encourage you to be skeptical. I would encourage you to judge incidents on a case-by-case basis. I would encourage you not to group whole groups of people together, such as police are all bad or police are all good. I would encourage you, when watching body camera footage, to do your own research. I would encourage you to, when you're watching body camera footage, just know you don't have all the information. You don't know what happened when the body camera, or before the body camera got turned on. You don't know what happened after it got turned off. You're not seeing all angles. And that reminds me of another comment that was made. One commenter said something to the effect of, "Well, the body camera captures the point of view of the officer." Wrong. It does not necessarily capture the view of the officer. Think about it. Here's a good example. Let's say you have a protest. I'm just making this up off the top of my head as an example. Let's say I'm an officer. I'm on scene. There's a big protest. I see two people in front of me who are exchanging words and they look like they're about to fight. There's lots of people around. I'm facing forward. My view of the body camera is facing those two people that are arguing because my torso is pointed towards them. That's where the body camera is, on the torso. But I look over because I hear something to my left, or I see something off the corner of my eye to the left-hand side, I turn my head, I look over to my left, and I see someone slap someone across the face. And right after that happens, these two people in front of me start fighting. So I'm right in front of these two people where the body camera is facing. I jump in and I arrest these two people who are fighting. I break up the fight. I do a use of force. I put them in handcuffs, and the body camera captures that. I'm done with that incident. After I've dealt with that problem, I go find the person that I saw slap the other person, which is a battery, off to my left that the body camera did not catch at all. I saw it off to my left. The body camera only captured the point of view from the torso in front of me. I go and I arrest that individual. I put them in handcuffs. Did the body camera capture them slapping someone? If that body camera footage is released, it looks like I'm arresting that person for absolutely no reason whatsoever. The incident has already taken place. The person has already calmed down. Let's say it's 30 minutes later, but me as a law enforcement officer, I saw a crime in progress, but I had to attend to the fight that was right in front of me at that moment. So I go and arrest that person later. That's released to YouTube. What do you think the public's going to think about that? That body camera is not the officer's point of view necessarily. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. The body camera doesn't capture everything. So I hope this clarifies some of the issues that were raised by some of the comments in part 1 of that video entitled, Should Police Wear Body Cameras? And specifically why they cannot be left on at all times during the shift. And I also went into some other issues. Feel free to comment down below. If I get enough comments, I might do a part 3. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to be notified when new videos are released. Take care and have a great day.